Mon nom? It doesn't matter. We, the French, learned that names don't matter in this war. Just numbers. Just bodies to fill the trenches. I'm a French soldier. I'm 28 years old. Or was. Age is irrelevant when you're dying. I came to this war in 1914. I believed I was fighting for France. For honor. For Alsace-Lorraine that we lost to Germany in 1870. Now, in 1916, I understand I was fighting just to not die. And even that was insufficient. You hear stories about the Somme. About the British and their failures. About the Germans and their defense. But no one talks about US. The French. No one talks about those who sacrificed everything. And yet we're forgotten. Let me tell you the French truth. The truth of invisibility. Before Somme, there was Verdun. Verdun. A name that became synonymous with hell. It started in February 1916. The Germans attacked. They wanted to bleed France, those were the German general's words. We will attack Verdun. We will blow everything up. And we'll force the French to send their entire army. When they see it's impossible, they'll give up. It was a plan, diabolical. And it worked partially. From February to June, Verdun was a carousel of death. My friends went to Verdun and, well, some came back. Many didn't. Those who came back weren't men anymore. They were shells. Someone told me that at Verdun, there were moments where they fired hundreds of thousands of grenades per day. Day after day. Month after month. My friend Pierre went to Verdun in March. Came back in May. Without a leg. Half of his face burned. I asked, Pierre, what happened? He looked at me. And simply started crying. Couldn't speak. Just cried. At Verdun, the French lost 300,000 men. The Germans lost 250,000. And why? For nothing. For absolutely nothing. The line stayed exactly the same. So when, in June, Haig sent messages asking the French to help at the Somme, what was our situation? We were bleeding. We were broken. We were dead. But we couldn't refuse. Because we were allies. Because friendship means you bleed for your friend's dream. My commander, General Rawlinson, gathered us. Boys, the British are planning a big offensive at the Somme. We will attack side by side. We will win together. Win together. Those words. I knew they were a lie. Not because Rawlinson was lying. But because. Well, because we already knew how this would end. With death. With more death. Sound of rain in background, we arrived at the Somme in May. Positions to the south of the British. The terrain was, well, it was like Verdun. Destroyed. Empty. But at least it was empty of bodies. Still. Because the bodies would come. Always would. Here's what I want to say right away. Before we go further, the British will tell you about their heroic failure. The Germans will tell you about their victorious defense. But us? The French? We will tell you about invisibility. And that invisibility is worse than any bullet. June 26th, 6 o'clock in the morning. The bombardment began. But here's the difference between us and the British. The British bombarded for 7 days. The French? We bombarded for only 2 days. 2 days. While the British suffered a week of apocalypse, we had only 2 days. Why? Because General Rawlinson wanted to start quickly. Because, well, military reasons don't matter much when you're about to die. 2 days of intense bombardment. Not like Verdun. Verdun was worse. But still, infernal. One of my colleagues, Jean, asked, "Do you think the Germans will all die in those 2 days?" I looked at him. No, Jean. The Germans are in deep bunkers. They will survive. They always survive. So why are we bombing? Because it's all we know how to do, I answered. There was something different about how the British looked at us. A mix of pity, envy? I'm not sure. The British had 1,000,000 men. Big army. Powerful weapon. We had 300,000 men available. Already weak from Verdun. A British officer said, "You people will just hold the line while we break through." Hold. Interesting word. It meant die here while you gain glory there. Pause. My captain, Captain Mercier, was old. Veteran of Verdun. Of other battles. He gathered us at the end of the bombardment. "Boys, tomorrow we begin. We will advance. It won't be easy, but it will be quick." Quick. How is death quick? When the bombardment ended, there was a strange silence. The kind of silence that precedes the storm. Jean asked again, "Do you think we'll survive?" "Some of us," I said. "Some, yes." He knew what it meant. Some. Not all. That night, I wrote a letter to my family. To my mother in Lyon. To my sister. To whoever could read it. If you're reading this, I want you to know that I thought about you until the end. You were my light in the dark. You were my hope when there was no hope. I put the letter in my pocket. Like all the other soldiers do. As if that letter was a talisman. A protection. As if God could read letters. July 1st, 7 o'clock in the morning. The British attacked to the north. We attacked to the south. Same day. Same hour. Same objective, break German lines. But the result? Completely different. Over. 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 We came out of our trenches. Advanced toward German positions. But here's the truth that history books don't tell: the French had success. Where the British lost 19,000 men on the first day, we lost only 1,500. Where the British got stuck on the barbed wire, we managed to pass. Where the British retreated in defeat, we advanced. We conquered 5 kilometers. 5 kilometers in one day. Jean was next to me. With a bayonet. With fear in his eyes. "Sergeant. We're advancing." "Yes, Jean. We're advancing." But there was no joy in the words. The Germans fired. But our bombardments had been effective. More effective than for the British. Why? Because Rawlinson was right about one thing: French tactics were better. We didn't march in straight lines. We used group tactics. We used the terrain. Result? Lower losses. But here's the part that hurts: nobody remembered us. The British had their greatest disaster. Media was there. Writers were there. Historians documented everything. The French had our greatest success. And nobody, absolutely nobody, noted it. We advanced 5 kilometers while the British retreated in defeat. But because the British had more men, more guns, more visibility, they became the focus of history. And we became a footnote. For 5 months, we were invisible. The British bled. The British received attention. The British became the story. We just died. Silently. Jean asked, "Sergeant, isn't this a victory?" "Yes, Jean. It's a victory." "So why doesn't it feel like a victory?" I had no answer. Because a victory only matters if someone remembers it. On that first day, we killed, how many Germans? Maybe 5,000? And we lost only 1,500 of ours. Almost impossible proportion. Perfect tactical success. But the British generals were desperate. They wanted results. So they sent their men in increasingly desperate attacks. And we followed the original plan. Firm march. Methodical advance. Captain Mercier came to see me, Do you know what we did? We conquered more terrain than any French operation in months. Yes, Captain. And nobody will remember it. He knew. He already knew. July began. The British kept attacking. Day after day. Failure after failure. We kept advancing. Slowly. Methodically. Without fanfare. Without celebration. Just march. The difference was striking. The British paid 1,000 dead per kilometer. We paid 300 dead per kilometer. Better tactics. Better planning. Respect for soldiers' lives. But while the British bled publicly, we marched in silence. Jean asked, "Sergeant, why do the British attack so directly? Why don't they use our tactics?" "Because," I answered, "the British believe in brute force. They believe that killing more enemy than losing of their own soldiers is victory. And us? What do we believe? We believe," I said, "that death is death. British or German, it doesn't matter. Death is waste." But here's the bitter truth, because the British were suffering publicly. Because there were British writers documenting the disaster. Because there were detailed British reports. The Somme became the British battle. And us? We just existed. Beside them. Invisible. A British officer came to check our positions. "Great work," he said. "You're holding the line while we break through." Holding. That word again. But the officer wasn't malicious. Just didn't understand. The British saw Somme as their battle. We saw it as extension of Verdun. More death. More sacrifice. More forgetting. July ended with 200,000 French dead or wounded. Meanwhile, 300,000 British. We lost a similar proportion. But we got 1/10 the attention. It's funny, you know? In history, the side that suffers most is often the one who gains the narrative. The British suffered. The British were documented. The British became the story. The French? We had success. But success invisibly. August was worse than July. Not because losses increased. But because it continued. And continued. And continued. Week after week. Month after month. The British still attacking in straight lines. The Germans still killing them. We still marching. Jean started making calculations. "Sergeant, in July we lost 200,000. In August how many will we lose?" "I don't know, Jean." "When does it stop? When is enough? When one side gives up? Or when there are no men left?" He looked at me. "Which will come first?" I didn't know how to answer. September. The British brought tanks. New technology. Great hope. For us? Just more of the same. One day, General Rawlinson came to visit our positions. "Men," he said, "the work you've done has been excellent. You held the line while we broke through to the north." Breaking through. An interesting word for repeated failure. But Rawlinson wasn't bad. Just didn't see. For 5 months, we were invisible. The British bled. The British received attention. The British became history. And the French? We became a footnote. The French also fought at the Somme, the books would say. As if it was additional. Bonus. But here's what I need you to know, 190,000 French died at the Somme. 190,000 men. 190,000 stories. 190,000 mothers receiving death notices. 190,000 lives that didn't return. And the majority? Nobody remembers. There's a cemetery of the French near Somme. You can go there today. Rows upon rows of crosses. French names. Dates from 1916. But few visit. Few know it's there. Because the history is about the British. By September, the General Rawlinson met with Captain Mercier. You know what you did? You conquered more terrain than any French operation in months. Yes, sir. And nobody will remember it. He was right. He already knew. For 5 months, we were alongside the British. Silent. Invisible. Sacrificing ourselves without recognition. The British gained sympathy for their suffering. We gained nothing. Captain Mercier called me in November. You know how many we lost? No, Captain. How many? 190,000 French. Dead, wounded, missing. I didn't respond. And the British? 420,000, and the Germans? 260,000, 880,000 in total. So, I said, we shared this battle equally. But nobody will remember it. Because, Mercier answered, the history is written by the victors. And the victors of this battle are the British. Even though they lost more men than anyone. Even though they failed in their objectives. Even though they made monumental tactical errors. But we conquered more terrain. Yes. But the British have more books. More writers. More visibility. So we're invisible? Yes, soldier. We're invisible. November ended. Somme ended. Haig declared victory. Because we conquered terrain. 140 kilometers. But at the cost of nearly 1 million lives. The French conquered 5 kilometers at the cost of 190,000 lives. The British conquered 100 kilometers at the cost of 420,000 lives. Both were horrible. Both were waste. But only the British are remembered. Jean asked at the end, Sergeant, all this? 190,000 of us? Was it worth it? No, Jean. It wasn't. So why did we do it? Because we're soldiers. Because our country asked. Because war doesn't ask permission. Just kills. I returned home in 1919. The war had ended. We won. That was the narrative. But what had I won? My mother was waiting. My sister was waiting. They cried when they saw me. But not with joy. With relief? Shock? I wasn't the same man. My son, you came back. Yes, I came back. But the part of me that left Lyon in 1914. That I left at the Somme. When I started telling about the Somme, nobody wanted to hear. You won, they said. You conquered terrain. Why complain? But how do you explain? How do you say that conquering 5 kilometers cost 190,000 lives? How do you say that you fired at men who had no chance? How do you say that you were invisible even while you bled? Jean never came back. He died in August, shot by a German machine gun while we advanced. Captain Mercier came back. But never was the same. He drank. A lot. Said one time that he saw the faces of the men he killed every night in his dreams. The history of the Somme became about the British. About Great Haig. About tactical failure. About British courage in face of death. And the French? We became a footnote. The French also fought at Somme, the books would say. Like it was additional. Bonus. But here's what I need you to understand. 190,000 French died at Somme. 190,000 men. 190,000 stories. 190,000 mothers who received death notices. 190,000 lives that didn't return. And the majority? Nobody remembers. There's a French cemetery near Somme. You can visit it today. Rows upon rows of crosses. French names. Dates from 1916. But few visit. Few know it's there. Because the story is about the British. You know what's worse than dying in battle? It's dying in battle and then being forgotten. It's bleeding and nobody notices. It's sacrificing everything and then being left out of history. After the Somme, there were 2 more years of war. Verdun kept bleeding. Other battles began. Death kept its march. And we, the French, kept marching beside the British. Silent. Invisible. Sacrificing ourselves without recognition. My mother died in 1925. She never planted flowers after I came back. Said the flowers reminded her of everything I lost. When I close my eyes, I still see the Somme. The trenches. The bodies. Jean's face in the moment he died. And I see history being written. I see the British being celebrated for their courage. I see the Germans being condemned for their defense. And I see us, we, the French. Not even a mention. Maybe that's the greatest lesson of the Somme. Not about military tactics. Not about leadership. But about how history is written. About how the winners don't just win the battle, but the narrative. And about how those who fight silently are left behind. 880,000 men died at the Somme. British. German. French. Some are remembered. But the majority? The majority became nothing. Nothing but statistics. Nothing but forgetting. That's my story. The story of forgetting. The story of the French soldier who bled, fought, and was erased. I'm not asking for pity. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just asking to be remembered. Because while the world knows about the Somme British, there are 190,000 French whose names are on cemeteries that few visit. If this video made you understand that there are more stories than those you habitually hear, if it made you question what you don't see in official history, please subscribe to the channel to hear more invisible stories. More forgotten narratives. Comment, how many knew that there were French at Somme? How many know their names? Share, help tell stories that history tried to erase. Next week we'll explore another invisible battle. Another conflict that changed the world and was forgotten. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you for remembering the 190,000. And thank you, especially, to Jean, who died so young that almost nobody remembered he had lived.